We're recording today on the lands of the Jagera people, and we pay our respects to the traditional owners here, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, I'm Tim. I'm a digital marketer and small business owner. Welcome to Beyond the Rona.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea. I'm a former registered nurse and midwife and a community advocate.
And we're on a journey to find what our community members think are the big problems and big solutions now that we're emerging from the pandemic. And today we're chatting with Nic Robertson, a high school teacher and entrepreneur. Thanks so much for joining us, Nic.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, thanks.
You've been a teacher, Nic, for 13 years, right?
Yeah.
And can you give us just a really kind of quick overview of your teaching career?
Cool. Well, I started teaching because I used to be a chef. I used to travel the world with Cirque du Soleil, and one of my jobs was to teach the young performers how to cook. And I just loved it. I loved teaching them and seeing their journey. So when I got back from working overseas, I started my degree in teaching, and ever since then I've been teaching at schools in Logan, Brisbane and the Gold Coast. But yeah, so quite a diverse array of experience, I'd say.
Yeah, and you've also got a side hustle.
Yes.
You're the founder of an app called Swap You. Not in the education space, but tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, so Swap You is all about, well, it's about swapping. So my belief is that we have so much stuff in the world, we have so many things, and we hold on to them beyond their use. So when we can't sell things, we just hold them. And we keep them under our beds or in our garage, and we don't move them. And eventually along comes hard rubbish day and we throw them away, when in fact there was so many times that we could have swapped them and got new experiences, swapped a basketball for a hockey stick and started a new sport, or swapped a dirt bike for a jet ski, or tried something new. But because we have cash in the way, which seems to be the only way that we want to trade, if we swap and trade instead our goods, then it's my belief that we can have a much richer experience in life that's not locked behind money.
That's a good idea.
It's a great idea. I really love it. And with that whole need for us to be more mindful of our waste and just the amount of stuff that ends up in landfill. I think this concept is excellent.
Yeah.
So really good.
And it gives, like, I know with kids too, because they kind of have seasons where they want to try different things, you know. So it's sort of like, oh, this time I want to try archery. Oh, this time I want to try, you know, rollerblading or whatever, you know. And they kind of have seasons where they want to try something, but then it stops.
And kids too, you know, don't have money, and you know, you'll often see kids trade Pokemon cards, you know, marbles when I was a kid, or whatever it was. You use what you had as your currency, and there's nothing stopping us from being able to do that. And now, when we're older, ownership sort of everybody wants to own something, but I think if you buy something once and swap it 10 times, and it's like you've got 10 different things. Don't let the item own you. You know, that's the old saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, great. We'll put the links in the show notes to that. But I guess to take us back to education, we're recording this in December, and although this episode won't be live until January, right now there's a story out in the Courier Mail talking about this headline of dire teacher shortages in Queensland, and you know, very sensational kind of numbers in that. This is kind of connected to, you know, the Queensland state government mandating, you know, double dose vaccinations in teachers. But now, since you're on the show, Nic, I really were interested in your thoughts on this, and what are you seeing kind of on the ground?
Well, I think a lot of that is beat up to sell newspapers. My opinion is based on my experience, which is that I haven't seen or heard of anybody who was giving up teaching because of the mandate. I mean, it's something that you know. I get every flu shot, and lots of people do it, and it's very common with teachers to get flu shots because kids are so full of germs. I remember the first time my first day on a teaching prac, a kid sneezed in my face, and it was just a kid thing. You know, they didn't mean to do it. It was a very, very small child. And I was sick for, I think, probably 2 months because my body had never encountered this. You know, I'd build up an immunity.
Germs.
These kids' germs. So we have a strong culture in teaching of already being vaccinated for lots of things anyway. And you know, I don't see that happening, but that's a personal choice that everyone's allowed to make as well. But I can't see it. I can't see there being a dire shortage. You know, there's probably lots of other reasons that teachers leave. I love teaching, but it's a challenge.
I think they are like an older cohort, aren't they? Like, you know, isn't it an aging profession? Kind of like nursing.
Yeah, and
so
you do find several years ago actually they were paying teachers to leave the profession because it becomes a job where passion is so important. And they were finding that people were just staying in the job because that was the one job they had, but they didn't really want to be in there. So I think it was about eight to 10 years ago, they were paying teachers $50,000 as an early retirement benefit. So there are many reasons that teachers leave, and this for some people might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I wouldn't say it's the lead; it's going to lead a mass exodus. That's only a personal opinion.
What I was getting at, though, was like I heard during the pandemic that the teachers were upset that they weren't given PPE, you know, protective things like, you know, masks and things like that, you know, that and that they felt that they weren't being protected from, you know, children passing on these COVID, for example, and that they weren't being looked after, you know, especially like way back in March at the beginning of 2020, you know, where they had the outbreak originally and they were deciding whether or not to shut the schools, and they said, oh no, children don't pass on COVID, they don't transmit COVID, so you can keep the schools open. And so teachers, you know, they were talking about teachers being kind of feeling let down, that they weren't being protected, and, you know, saying, oh, we've got a lot of elderly, or not elderly, but like older teachers. And so it seems like a bit contradictory. They were saying, you know, it's sort of like they were saying, oh no, we're not being protected, but now it's
But I think that's been something that's happened throughout the pandemic. There's been a lot of misspeak, I guess, and confusion. And you know, I think the one thing I'd love is the consistency across all of this. You know, that would be great, because it seems to me that if it's a disease, then it's going to have one way of acting, and we should all do what we should all do together rather than everybody having their own rules. But yeah, when it comes to PPE, I mean, everybody, you know, you've got to protect your workers, don't you? So that's important.
During the pandemic, then, did you find that, you know, when they did find that they did have to shut the schools, how did they find the workloads, you know, that was impacting on teachers? Like, what was that like?
That was difficult, mainly because teachers don't have a lot of training in your online education. It's a very specialist field. Teachers are trained through their degrees to be in front of kids, to be essentially having the kids in the same room, seeing facial cues, being able to have groups working together. You know, the groups. There's also ways of kids leading other kids. There's a whole bunch of different techniques that we use as teachers, and then all of a sudden you've just got yourself a computer and a whole bunch of kids sitting at their lounge room tables or in their bedrooms or wherever they are around around the suburbs near you, and it really disconnects. So your workload becomes more from a paperwork perspective, but it also becomes more as far as your thinking, because you have to think of all new ways of getting the kids engaged. So your brain doesn't really switch off. So when you think of the word workload, I'd put it to more to the fact that there's work that you do, there's typing and all that sort of reporting and everything, but there's also when the day finishes, you're always thinking of the next lesson, what you've got to do. So the workload's more of a brain load. I'd put that word into the mix.
Yeah.
In the previous episode, we chatted with Asher and Rosie about their experience, Rosie in particular, finishing grade 12. And there was definitely that sense that they were talking about around, it seemed like schools really didn't move fast enough. Like, sure, no one saw this coming, but it was as well like, what are the things that we can do now? And to really try to put an immediate plan in place, knowing that this thing is going to roll on for quite some time. What's your perspective on that, Nic, as a teacher, and how were schools able to roll out the changes that they needed to make?
Yeah, I think that's got a lot to do with the resources that the school already had. So a lot of schools were already using learning management systems like Moodle or Schoolbox. So a lot of them already had that system in place. So all they had to do was to just increase the frequency of the lessons and just to use that as a structure. But if you didn't have that already there, then you were behind the eight ball a long way. So really that depended a lot on resourcing, planning, and everything that led up to that point. I think schools would be more ready now, of course, because they've had this point, this pandemic occurred, but it was mainly the well-resourced schools, and even the schools that had somebody on staff that was forward-thinking. They were the schools that were always a little bit more prepared for this. So our school, where I teach, was very prepared, and the parents were very, very happy. So that was a good thing. But I could also imagine there'd be a lot of schools out there that just missed the mark.
And this is a really interesting point. You teach in a private school at the moment, right? But previously you have experience as well in the public school system. And so I think that really feels like there's very big differences in the way schools have been able to respond to that. But since you've got experience in kind of like both of those sides, what are your general thoughts actually on how big or small those differences are?
Well, there's the big. I think one of the big ones is the bring your own device within state schools. So you're encouraged to bring your own device, or you also have a school issued device which you pay on a subscription program and you pay for that. But the level of devices that some schools will give and some schools will have access to. I've heard of schools where their device that they were giving was a mobile phone. So there were students doing Word documents on a mobile phone. You can imagine an old iPhone 6 trying to do a Word document. So, and that was a school directive that they were saying you can use a mobile phone to do these things. So I think there's some real issues there, and that came down to whether the parents were able to afford to pay. So that was an issue. So you can imagine equity is a real issue around that. But yeah, that was a big one, because hardware is a massive thing when it comes to accessing, and even internet access and those sorts of things. You've got to be able to connect into the digital highway with it, or else you're just sitting by the side of the road. So there's some.
I actually heard, I've read a few things during the pandemic that we had some groups of people who were gathering in library car parks to access the internet. Had you read about that?
Yeah. To do their
homework?
Yeah, I've definitely heard about that. and even supermarkets, you can get free access in your big shopping centres. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. There's lots of people out there that don't have the money to be able to access, and in a system where we pride ourselves on public schooling, free schooling for all. Pandemic was really a problem. It created a problem for those, and really it wasn't fair anymore. People weren't receiving the same access,
same level, and the same access to the curriculum then, because I mean, if people can't afford to get access to an iPad, and I know NAPLAN was all online this year. So if they can't afford to, and I know NAPLAN isn't for the child, it's really for the school, but still, if you can't afford to get access to the internet and you can't afford to get access to, something like an iPad or something you can use to do Word documents, well, then you are disadvantaged, aren't you, in your education now?
And on top of that as well, the fact remains that not all learners are the same. So there's lots of different ways of learning. Whether you learn in a place you prefer to learn from your peers, you prefer to learn from a teacher, you prefer to learn by yourself. This pandemic had everybody learning the one way. You all had to learn. Essentially, you relied on being a self-led learner. Whilst you had the teacher in the background on the screen saying do this and do that, and there was prompts within the programs that you were using, essentially you had to get yourself up to do it, and you had to be really inspired to do it. And when you have kids out there doing subjects that they're not really interested in, they're not going to find it very easy to be inspired to do those subjects. So marks are going to drop, and there's going to be a big gap in some of those subjects moving forward, because computers can't do it all. You have to have a teacher in front of you. And I know lots of people say, you don't, but we are humans. We have to have human interaction. And the feedback loop when a teacher's standing in front of 30 kids, what they're seeing is like an air traffic controller. There's so many things happening, so much information coming back and forward, and you're juggling a lot of things, but it's a rich environment, and kids are learning all the time within that environment. But when you put them in front of a screen, and as unfortunately we had to do, there's going to be some things which are going to suffer, and in a lot of cases, I couldn't imagine myself doing grade 12 last year or this year. Last year would have been worse, but this year it would just be such a massive challenge.
Yeah, I found that really interesting that, they kept a lot of the, apparently, I mean, they kept a lot of the special schools open so that, I'm not really sure the reasoning behind it, but I think it was so that they could keep sort of respite going more than anything. But I'm hoping that we kind of move towards inclusive education. Have you heard of this before? Where we kind of move everybody into the same school. I know that with the pandemic, you didn't have any naughty kids in your classroom then, to sort of did you feel like it was maybe better because you didn't have everybody in the classroom? I don't know. What are your thoughts about all of this stuff?
No, it's very... if I wanted to be for myself, I love working with kids. That's why I got into it, from the circus and all of that. But if I wanted to just, be on the keyboard all the time, I probably would have taken a different job. To be a teacher, you've got to be interested in working with kids, and naughty kids are part of the job, and they're not really naughty. There's no such thing as a naughty kid. They're just challenged in a little... They're just different, there's jails are filled with adults, not kids. Adults are the problems, not kids.
Also sorry, Tim, did you want to go?
No, go.
The messaging that is coming is from teachers, I feel, is quite confusing sometimes. But the major message that we tend to hear is workloads. and that the workloads are huge. But then, we get the everyday person says, oh, well, they only work from like 9 to 3 and they get all of the school holidays off. So what are they complaining about? Can you like set the story straight of like what is the message that is the problem with teaching?
Well, because I wasn't a teacher all my life, I hear their story. I hear the other side of the story. We do work a shorter day in many cases, and I'm on holidays right now. I'm on school holidays, and I get about between 9 and 10 weeks holiday a year. So I'm not complaining so much about the workload, and I wouldn't say it's a workload. When I look at a teacher, I'd say if there was an Olympic sport, we're like the sprinters. So we've got a lot to do in a short period of time. So our year is more condensed. It's shorter. So we're doing a lot in a real quick space of time. We've got to get all the assessment done. We've got to get an event organised. We've got to take care of the kid who's just thrown up at the same time as making sure this child over here isn't fighting with the other one. So the workload isn't so much that it's always the same, but during the term time, we go. And we don't, we very rarely work from 9 to 3. We'll always work, most of us anyway, will at least go from 8 to 4. So it's a regular 9 to 5 day, so the same amount of hours. But, I'd say that the workload isn't long all the time, but it's really condensed. And when we are busy, we are very, very busy, and we've got a lot of things to do. But in saying that, I'd look at the term structure. I'd wonder why we have 4 terms. I'd wonder why we go from 9 to 3. Like, so many cars on the road at the same time, every time of the day. Well, why are we still having the same structure for these things when, really we could, after the pandemic, we could have such a different array. There's no reason that we have to keep the school day the same length, because we have online learning, we have other ways of learning, even though it's not perfect yet. But we could do so many things differently. We don't have to have, busy traffic hours at the same time. We don't have to do all the same ways that we've done it. And maybe teachers will have changed massively in the next 10 years, and it's exciting.
I think that's such a good point. It's like, this event, the pandemic, was like a disaster in so many instances, but has shifted things in such a way that perhaps we can take some learnings from that into the future. There's this kind of like meme online about, the boardroom table and everyone's sitting there with their titles, and then there's like a coronavirus bubble sitting in a chair with the job title like digital transformation. And it's like, in companies, in corporations, businesses that have been able to actually go remote, introduce flexible work, and just provide a better kind of experience and better benefits for employees, interested in this idea actually of schools. And I think that point you make about traffic and, the school drop-offs and pickups perhaps being staggered and just kind of working differently. Do you think that there's other kind of learning and teaching methods that we can take from the pandemic and apply?
Well, yeah, I think there's, you could do a mixture. We know what parts of digital learning and online learning work. We know that some of it works. We know that we've got to get our equity, we've got to make sure everybody has access if we're going to do it a certain way. But also we have so many different kids with so many different opportunities now, and they don't need to fit perfectly into a box. So giving them the ability to because really students now they've got such a choice. They don't have to do exactly how, we've done it before and we've said it before. They don't have to do it the same way. So giving them more options and being able to cater for their diversity and their learning styles, I think would be a huge difference for us, because there's so many things which are going to change after this. there's so many ways that students can express themselves, and jobs that, that they can prepare for by being, just being, having the ability to have, more choice. We don't have to do everything the same way it was before. These kids now are seeing there's so many other ways of doing it. And that's...
Because you were saying you can also do your TAFE at school too now.
Yeah. So you've got TAFE at school. You've got there's massive amounts of options that kids have. So we don't have to keep doing everything the same way, I guess, is my main point. But you've got TAFEs in schools. You've got kids who are sportsmen. They're playing particular sports. Let's lift them up. That's a way of a great way of learning and showing your development. And there's also getting industry much more involved in schools, because it's industry that receives the kids after all this training. So there can't be such a disconnect between the two. There has to be a real gateway between industry and schools. So seeing what they want as well would be a big thing.
What about kids getting their driver's license in school? I mean, because I know that, kids on the south side had a really hard time getting things like lessons during the pandemic. And I mean, they have a hard time getting the 100 hours anyway, because their parents are both working or they don't have a car in the family. I mean, how are kids in Logan supposed to get their license?
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's a lot of there would be a lot of connections that we could make to get those kids helped through. There'd be a lot of people out there who would have cars, people who are retired that could help out and wouldn't mind helping out. I love that idea. I think, and it's in a safe environment. So many kids will get a car and go, okay, I've got a car now, and go off and hurt themselves in it. And we don't want that. We want the whole community to help these kids out and to embrace them into having a driver's license. Yeah.
One thing I absolutely love is that they've taught kids science. That schools have taught kids science rather than, the political narrative of there's no such thing as climate change. Like, these kids are coming out going, yes, there is. Like, and they're all they're all going, what are you talking about? Like, these kids are really, really smart. Like, they know what's going on. They're so much smarter than what these politicians make out.
Yeah. Well, there's science, isn't it? I mean, it's based on fact. The politics quite often isn't.
Yes. And so you can't, like, the politicians just cannot say anything to these kids because they're coming out of school going, no, that's not true. No, we learnt in school. No, they're really, really smart. And like you say, with their devices, they can just look up the truth now, So politicians just don't have it over them anymore.
No, that's right. And that's all for the best, probably. Definitely.
Oh yeah, I feel like it. A well-educated population can take advantage of better jobs, make better decisions. Like, when I hear about things like Germany returning to free, like 100% free university, where it was interesting to hear that, like, we used to have that in Australia. We used to have that, especially for a lot of the politicians that are in now, benefited from this great opportunity, and then it's been kind of like pared back over the decades. I think kind of like somewhat related to that, and what you were talking about with skills based and trade based kind of learning. I guess I will make a general statement, but in the Logan area, certainly trades are still a big component of the pathways that kids have through into the workforce. I Are you seeing any other changes? If we just kind of think about Logan, are there any other trends that are happening at the moment?
I'd say there's, well, one job that I used to have was I used to run a trade training centre. So trades are very strong because you can get straight out of school and just jump straight into your job, and you're getting paid straight away. So I'm seeing a lot more apprenticeships starting in grade 11 and grade 12, which is good. So lots of kids have identified by grade 10 really, and this has been happening for a while, but they're identifying by grade 10 that they're ready to go into work. So they start 1 or 2 days a week and they're into their apprenticeships. But on top of that, one thing that I have seen as well is those kids who are doing those apprenticeships and starting that, they're already starting to think about what they want to do after their apprenticeship. So they're going, okay, well, I've done this apprenticeship and I'm going to do this for a certain amount of years and then I'm going to jump into the next thing. And I think that, so that might be being a carpenter and then going on to doing engineering or something within the same industry. And they're seeing that because they've got both feet in the same, they've got 2 feet in different fields. One, they're at school and they're also in industry. So they're seeing the connection between education and industry at the same time. And then they're saying, okay, well, this is just a part of my life. This is the first part. I'm going to get this apprenticeship, and then I'm going to get on to the next thing. Because, as we know, we work for about 50 years of our life. If you start working at 17, retirement age is 67, and that's only going to go up. That's 50 years. Yeah. And when you tell a student that, you should see the look on their face when you tell them, okay, you're leaving school. You've got 50 years before you retire. Yeah. They don't, kids, that's why education is so important. You don't want to be doing something that you hate for 50 years.
No, that's
Imagine that. You want to be doing something that you love. And even if you don't necessarily love it, you want to be able to enjoy it to the degree where you're not unhappy every day of your life going to work.
Because you have to go there every day.
Yeah, and people don't want. I don't think anybody really doesn't want to have a job. I think people want to be valued and want to add something to the world, and whether that's volunteering their entire life or doing something, but they don't really. People don't want to just do nothing. They want to feel like
I believe that too. Yeah, I believe that too, that people want to work, and I represent the disability community a lot as well. And, people say that as well, that, but I say that as well, that people want to work, given the tools, given the access to jobs, and, that we want to work, we want to make a difference, we want to leave a legacy, we want to actually be able to make an impact on society in some sort of positive way, that you feel good about yourself and that you feel that you're making a positive difference, and that you're leaving something behind, that you're somehow changing the world for the better, and that your reason for being here was, for a reason, that you're here for a reason, that you're not here, that you're a mistake, people want to know that, people want to feel that there is a reason for you making it this far.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, this has been a really great chat, Nic. Before we let you go, though, we want to ask you, what are your 3 big ideas for how we teach students better into the future, whether that's improving learning outcomes or indeed your experience as a teacher? Would you have 3 big ideas?
Okay, so thought about these, and I've just put them down into just single words. So my first one is change. So this is an opportunity for change. It's an opportunity to really look at things and to sweep away what hasn't worked. So change is one. Let's move away from the traffic jams in the morning, the things that we never liked before, and let's look at it differently. Not just traffic jams. I mean there's so much out there. Second one is connection. Connection is important, and we can connect online, and we can do that. But the fact is that face-to-face connection is always going to be important when it comes to, humans learning from each other. So connections are a massive thing. So keep connection, change, keep connection. And finally, the last one is training, because teachers need to be trained. Kids need to be trained how to learn well if they're going to be doing lots of things online. We can't just throw this tool, which is online learning, into the mix and expect everybody to be fine with it. People have to receive training, and I think that we're close to understanding what it is we're doing now, and training is going to be a big one. But training and education is huge throughout our lives for so many things. Tim, yourself, when you're always learning a new program, there's always something new coming out. You've always got to add layers and layers on top of your education. So training never stops, education never stops. So so my three are change, connection, and training.
That's excellent. Yeah. No, really, really great big ideas. Well, yeah, thanks again, Nic. It's been really great to have you on, and keep up the great work. It's a slog being a teacher, and I think that as in community, it's a profession that is undervalued. But yeah, you're doing an awesome job. So
yes,
yeah,
we do value you. Thank you for taking care of our next generation, Nic.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. You've been listening to Beyond the Rona. Caption audio is available on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit beyondtherona.com to listen to previous episodes or to get in touch with us. Catch you next time.